cup of coffee can help prevent cancer, a new study suggests. It's just the latest report of many on our food and our health. The advice is often baffling, so just who are we to believe? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm David Foster. Two new studies suggest coffee is the latest substance that could help prevent cancer. Researchers at Tokyo's National Cancer Center found that women who drank 3 or more cups of coffee a day could halve their risk of colon cancer. There was apparently no significant benefit to men. And a new study by US scientists found that combining coffee drinking with regular exercise may boost protection against skin cancer. Their tests were carried out on mice and are yet to be tried out on humans. Well, these studies are just a few of the thousands done on cancer prevention each year, and many of those studies have conflicting results. Let's get more now from Nicole Johnson.
Just having a drink can be confusing. One study says coffee can cut your cancer risk, but others show that the caffeine in your daily cup could lead to high blood pressure. And coffee isn't the only drink with conflicting health benefits. Studies done over the past several decades show that drinking wine could reduce heart disease in some populations. And while a recent US study states that men who drink wine could reduce their risk of prostate cancer, a European study concluded that a daily glass of wine increases the risk of bowel cancer by 10%. That same study showed that drinking beer is just as harmful. But other research concludes that a daily beer can be good and reduces the risk of heart disease and strokes. A recent study by the American Cancer Society shows just how difficult it is for people to make sense of all the medical information available. The study, carried out in the US, showed that people think pollution is more likely to cause lung cancer than smoking. This despite decades of studies that show cigarette smoking is the #1 cause of lung cancer. The study's conclusion: make sure you trust your sources of information. But figuring that out, it seems, could be just as difficult as knowing what to drink.
Joining us now, our guests from New Jersey in the United States, Professor Alan Connie, the lead scientist in one of the studies we're discussing today. That's the one involving coffee and exercise and skin cancer. From London, Professor Mayo Lakhani, Chairman of the Royal College of General Practitioners. That's the group of Britain's family doctors. And also in London, Josephine Carrido, the Science Information Officer at the Cancer Research Organisation. Let's try and clear up some of the confusion, starting first of all, if I may, in the United States. Professor Connie, is there a danger when you see the headlines that something like this is made around the world, that it raises false hopes?
Yes, I think that one needs to be very careful in interpreting the news that is broadcast, and to look very carefully at how the study was done, how carefully the controls were, how does one make comparisons. It's very difficult to do human studies and to do carefully controlled human studies. So I think that that's a great concern with any of the epidemiology or human studies that are done. In animals, it's easier to control the various variables that could creep into a human study, but even with animal studies, you need to be careful that you have the proper controls.
If you could simplify it and put it in layman's terms, can you explain to our viewers what you think you have discovered?
What we found in mice, that normally ultraviolet light, which is the major cancer-causing radiation from sunlight, causes skin cancer. Now, the mice, as well as humans, in their skin have an adaptive protective mechanism that kills off badly damaged skin cells that are damaged in their DNA by a process called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, the killing of the badly damaged DNA cells. That's a normal mechanism that happens in ultraviolet light treated animals as well as in humans. Now, in the mice, we fed these mice, we fed them in the drinking water, we gave them caffeine, or we allowed them to exercise on running wheels that we put into their cages. Now, the mice love to go on the running wheel. This is entirely voluntary. They'll get on it for a little while, and then they'll get off, and then they'll get it back on again. Giving the mice either caffeine in the drinking water or allowing them to exercise enhances this apoptotic response. In other words, you have more killing of the ultraviolet light damaged cells in the skin. But when you combine the two treatments, the caffeine administration as well as allowing the mice exercise, you get a greater than additive response. So the effect is much magnified, and you have the killing of the DNA damaged cells to a much greater extent. And we think this will allow protection from the animals in terms of ultraviolet light-induced skin cancer.
Well, as you say, a long way to go.
So that's basically the finding that we've had.
Difficult to work out whether it's going to be effective yet because you haven't tested it on humans. Let's go to London and talk to Professor Lakhani, who heads the body of Britain's family doctors. When stories like this make the news, do you get a rush of people to doctors' surgeries saying, look, you can cure me?
Well, cancer is very much at the forefront of people's minds. You know, it's a dreadful disease. 1 in 3 people will get cancer. I'm always pleased when people come to me to ask for advice about how they can stop and prevent a cancer. You know, it's really important we talk about cancer. A lot can be done. You know, half the cancers can be prevented by changes in lifestyle. But I do agree that reports like this can be confusing. But actually, by and large, most people are quite sensible. They're able to make decisions about what this means. They know that there is a long gap between something being discovered in a laboratory and before it becomes regular, everyday advice. And it's good that we've got such great scientists who are doing research. Research is the way to beat cancer. But I think a lot can be done. I wouldn't want people to think that it's so confusing, we don't know what can be done. Actually, a lot can be done. For example, quitting smoking, having a healthy lifestyle, having a healthy diet, reducing the amount of alcohol you can drink, taking exercise. These simple things, having preventative checkups, are really important.
But as our reporter said, you know, sometimes it's on the one hand this is good for you, on the other hand this is going to hurt you, and in so many cases it's quite confusing. Josephine Corrido, if you could look at what you consider to be the biggest advances, those that are being studied around the world in terms of cancer treatment, what would you say they are right now?
Well, there are many advances at the moment, and particularly we're making advances in tailoring treatment to people's particular type of cancer. And within a certain cancer type, people will respond differently to treatment because they have a different subtype of a particular cancer. So we're making a lot of advances in that way. And also, I would like to echo those words of prevention. There's so much that people can do to reduce their own risk of getting cancer. As we've already heard, around half of all cancers can be prevented by changes to lifestyle. And it's really important when we have these confusing messages through the media that people focus on what we do know and what we can do to prevent getting cancer.
But how do they know what we do know?
Well, there's certain, for example, through the Cancer Research UK Reduce the Risk campaign, there are 5 certain elements that we focus on, which are proven ways that experts have definitely proven will help reduce our risk of getting cancer. And they include, first and foremostly, giving up smoking, and then maintaining a healthy body weight and a healthy diet, taking regular exercise, taking care in the sun to prevent getting skin cancer, and then going for cancer screening when invited.
Professor Connie, let's go back to the United States now. And in the limited research that I've been able to do during the course of the last few hours, I discovered that you were talking about the beneficial effects of caffeine on mice as long ago as 4 years ago when it came to particular types of cancer. So this isn't really new, is it?
Well, the combination of exercise and caffeine administration is new, that you have a greater than additive response. That's new. What we do know in animals is that giving caffeine or the exercise by themselves inhibit ultraviolet light-induced skin cancer. Whether or not this will work in people and whether the combination is going to be more effective, we still don't know. But I agree with our other guests that prevention, I think, is going to be the most important way of fighting cancer. What we'd like to do is be able to prevent it so that we don't have to treat it. And our estimates are that perhaps 2/3 of human cancer is related to lifestyle, dietary factors, and tobacco smoking being the most important and clear-cut way of preventing cancer. Now, sometimes animal studies are not extrapolatable to humans, whereas other times they are. Now, another important aspect, I think, is viral diseases. Over the last number of years, viruses that play a role in cancer are becoming increasingly more important. The papillomavirus, which is important for human cervical cancer, there's now a vaccine that can prevent that. And this is another major advance in terms of cancer prevention.
But I'm not suggesting that...
Now, in our studies...
If you'll excuse me for interrupting, I'm not suggesting that any of this is snake oil treatment, but people might get a bit confused, as we've suggested. I read that rosemary and curry powder, according to your group, may also help in preventing cancer, and rubbing caffeine or tea onto your skin can help prevent skin cancer. Is this really true?
In mice, that is true, certain kinds of skin cancer. But that's a long ways from human studies, and it's a very specific, well-controlled study done in a certain way, which may or may not be applicable to humans. And this is not the way that you'd be treating humans. If you treat animals, mice say, with curcumin, which is a yellow pigment in the Indian food curry, you can inhibit chemically induced colon cancer, as well as chemically induced breast cancer. Now, whether this works in humans is not known, and that still needs to be studied. The NIH has a program to investigate the effects of curcumin on colon cancer, whether or not it will be protective. There are many chemicals that have been studied in animals that have been shown to inhibit cancer in various models, but there's a great need to stimulate further research in people to see whether or not you can extrapolate the results from animal studies, which are more carefully controlled, to human studies, which are more difficult and less easy to control. So that's a great need to do very carefully controlled studies in people to see whether the results we see in animals can be extrapolated to humans.
Well, let's see what the World Health Organization is saying about cancer in general. It's the leading cause of death worldwide. 7.6 million people died of cancer out of the 58 million total global deaths in 2005. And the main types of killer cancer: lung cancer, which claims 1.3 million lives a year, and with that figure rising, followed by stomach, liver, colon and breast cancers. Now, we're talking about skin cancer particularly tonight. The mortality rate in that's especially high in the United States, with over 1 million cases apparently reported annually. Cancer rates projected to rise further over the next 30 years, especially in low-income countries, and I'd like to ask about that in just a moment. Prostate cancer estimated to climb by 40% over the next 25 years, but programs across the developed world, mainly in the US and the UK, are helping more people diagnosed with the disease survive treatment every year. Professor Lakhani, let me ask you this particular question. I read that skin cancer is increasing, particularly among young people. Why do you believe that is?
I think the reasons are complex, but one factor is greater exposure to sunlight, and the importance, I would say, here of following sun-smart advice. That means for fair-skinned individuals to use sun-blocking creams of an adequate factor, and also covering up. You know, I understand the importance of this research on caffeine and its effect in the long term in preventing skin cancer, but I wouldn't want anyone to get the impression that that's a substitute, that caffeine is a substitute for not covering up or using sun-blocking cream in fair-skinned individuals. So I would like to emphasize that point. Skin cancer is preventable. Sunlight is a common cause of skin cancer. You can do something about it. Please cover up and use sun cream.
Josephine Queride from the Cancer Research Organization, I mentioned that low-income countries were where it was thought the incidence of cancer might rise the most in the next decade or so.
Yes.
Explain to our viewers why that might be.
It's very interesting what you were saying, because in the UK, for example, the top 4 major cancers are breast, bowel, lung and prostate. And that's a different order to what you were highlighting in the world order. And the reason for this is that certain cancers like liver cancer and like stomach cancer and like cervical cancer have a viral or infectious component to them, which in this country we can tackle with vaccines and treatment. So for example, stomach cancer is one of the causes of that is in fact infection with Helicobacter pylori, which we can treat very easily in this country, but is not so easily treated in developing countries. Similarly, liver cancer is often caused by hepatitis B, but we can vaccinate against that in this country, whereas we can't necessarily do that so well in developing countries. And again, cervical cancer we know is caused by the human papillomavirus. And in the developed world, we have recently produced a vaccine against this, certain strands of this virus.
But come
so
a long
that's
way,
one
haven't
of
we,
the
in the last 25 years or so? We've come a very long way.
Definitely, absolutely. We've made a lot of progress, but in several cancer types, there's still a long way to go.
I'm thinking particularly about leukemia in children. That's very good news, isn't it? The way that
Yes.
the rates of that,
Yes.
or the cure for that, is increasing.
Yes, and nowadays 7 out of 10 children with leukemia will survive, so that's excellent news. But then there are other cancers where there's more work to be done.
Professor Connie, since you started studying cancer, and it's many years now, you're well respected throughout the industry, what kind of advances do you think we've seen that are the most significant?
Well, I think we've seen a number of advances, both in terms of curing cancer as well as prevention with the vaccines and with knowing how to modify our lifestyle, stopping smoking and exercising, leading a good lifestyle. Now, for the first time in the last few years in the United States, the cancer deaths are starting to go down, which is good news. And I think that's because of a combination of many things. And people over or under 80, I believe it is, that cancer deaths are even very similar to that for heart disease, which is people over 80, heart disease deaths are certainly the greatest killer.
And have you seen during the course of your career a great increase in the incidence of environmentally aggravated cancer?
Well, in some places it has increased, or certainly in some of the countries where tobacco smoking is very prevalent, lung cancer continues to be, and perhaps even a greater effect in terms of lung cancer risk. So in places where there's more tobacco use, then lung cancer is going to be increasing. Here in the United States, it's decreasing. People are stopping smoking, but it's still a very important problem. I think that cigarette smoking is the most easily preventable cancers. There needs to be more done to try and get people to stop smoking, and perhaps more important, to stop them from starting in the first place.
Professor Lakhani, from the British General Practitioners Council, let me ask you to reflect upon what you've seen during the course of your career. People perhaps more aware about self-diagnosis as well, are they not? Maybe 25 years ago they would have gone to the doctor when it was perhaps too late. Nowadays they're aware of the signs.
Indeed, and I've seen a big change in how cancer is diagnosed, treated and managed. Can I say to your viewers that, we have to be really positive about cancer. Most people with cancer survive, they get well. Many cancers can now be cured. It's like chronic disease like diabetes or high blood pressure. Whilst it's a dreadful diagnosis and people are frightened, actually work with your doctor and your specialist to have treatment, because that can make a big difference. But I do think that worldwide, I think one of the big problems is about tobacco smoking. I travel a lot and I see the different countries have different policies about smoking. I think we should be much more harder and aggressive about tackling tobacco smoking worldwide, and I would encourage everyone, all the governments, to tackle that issue very seriously.
But natural remedies too. We're talking here about coffee, and just a couple of examples that I found during the course of looking at this. It helps with diabetes. Apparently it helps with heart problems, gallstones, Parkinson's disease. There's a whole host of different things you can find out if you do your own research.
Yes, indeed, and I think a healthy, balanced diet and a lifestyle is very important. But I must emphasize that these are not treatments for cancer. I have come across 1 or 2 people who have relied solely on natural treatments for their cancer and have stopped their medical treatments, and they have come to harm because of that. So let's be clear, this is not a substitute for diagnosis, for proper treatment, for chemotherapy and radiotherapy. These are helpful things to do as we learn more about it. But I think prevention, diagnosis and medical treatment is absolutely essential.
Josephine Caride, as a representative of Cancer Research UK, you look at the amount of money that governments pour into looking at these problems. Presumably you don't think there's enough, but is it adequate?
Well, we're the leading independent organisation in the UK dedicated to cancer research, and we're spending a lot of the generously donated money by the public on cancer research.
So do you get very much or anything at all from the government?
We get money from the government to help us with our health awareness campaigns, which are incredibly important in raising awareness of the signs and symptoms of cancer and the things that we can do to reduce our risk of getting cancer. And there are 3 health awareness campaigns that we currently run. The Reduce the Risk campaign, which is 5 steps that you can take to help reduce your risk of getting cancer. The Sun Smart campaign, which is explaining to people how they can take care in the sun in the summer months to prevent getting skin cancer. And Open Up to Mouth Cancer, which is highlighting and raising the profile of mouth cancer in the UK population.
Professor Connie, it's your report that we're looking at here tonight. Last word to you. What's next?
Well, I think next we have to do carefully controlled clinical trials to see whether or not drinking caffeine or caffeinated beverages has an effect on skin cancer. There are some epidemiology studies that suggest that maybe it does. These need to be repeated. There needs to be studies also with exercise to see whether exercise has an effect on sunlight-induced skin cancer, as well as the precancerous lesions, actinic keratoses. And these are studies that still need to be done. So what we've found are only studies in mice, and we need to extrapolate further to see whether or not a combination of caffeine ingestion combined with exercise has a beneficial effect on sunlight-induced skin cancer. In animal studies, some of these effects or some of these treatments have been shown also have effects on colon cancer and liver cancer and other kinds of internal cancers. There's a need to do more studies in humans as well to see whether or not these treatments or lifestyle differences can have an effect on the other cancers. A great need for more human research, and I think that's where we have to go.
Good luck, Dr. Connie. Thank you very much indeed. Good luck with the rest of your research. Also, our thanks to Maya Lakhani from the Royal College of General Practitioners in Britain, and to Josephine Caride from Cancer Research UK. Best of luck to all of you. Good to hear that news, and thank you for watching this edition of Inside Story from all of us on the team. For now, goodbye. Is this a mocha choca frappuccino? It doesn't taste like. Are you sure?